Last week, I told you the story of how my great uncle, who we all called Pappy, acquired his amazing card skills. So you may wonder why, given all of his abilities, Pappy didn't go on to make millions. And indeed, he started out that way, hustling people in an early game of three-card Monte. But then, things took an unexpected turn.
I have here the actual cards that Pappy used in his games of chance. He sent them to me shortly before he died. Now, they look a little different than cards do today, but they operate just the same. Pappy would use several black spot cards that looked more or less identical, and then a red card, a king of diamonds, the Monte, which was the card that the marks had to follow. Now, Pappy always kept the red card 4 from the face, and at the same time, 4 from the top. And this way, he always knew where it was. The object of the game was simple. You just had to follow the king of diamonds, and if you could guess where it was, you could double your money. But if you lost, Pappy got to keep your money. Now, Pappy would begin by placing down one spot card and then another. He would often mix these up just to get the crowd warmed up. And then finally, he would place down the king of diamonds and ask the crowd to keep up with it as he mixed the cards. He would mix them more and more, and finally, at some point, he would stop and he would ask for the mark to point to the king of diamonds. Most of the time, the mark would choose correctly, because at this point, the game wasn't that difficult. But this was just to sucker the mark in until the real game began. At some point, after the mark had made a few successful guesses, Pappy would deal the second card down instead of the king. This meant, of course, that the king was now in his hands and the mark couldn't win no matter how much he chose. And this is when the real money came out. Now, it happened that one day, Pappy noticed an old gypsy woman at the back of the crowd. After he had won a fair amount of money from the locals and was beginning to pack up, she approached him and said, "I would like to play your game." Now, Pappy wasn't too keen on taking money from an old woman, but she placed down a gold coin, and that gold coin glittered so brightly that he just couldn't look away. So he agreed. "Okay, Grandma, all you have to do is lay your money on the king and you'll be a winner." Well, the gypsy woman appeared to consider each card very carefully, until finally she took the money and placed it on the packet in Pappy's hand. "I choose here." Suddenly, Pappy began to sweat. This had never happened before. And so for the first time, he performed a little magic. He said, "I'm sorry, Grandma, but I'm afraid the king isn't among any of these cards. You've lost." The gypsy woman said, "That is impossible. Let me see the back of those cards." And so he did. "Nothing to see here." The gypsy woman glared at Pappy as he slipped her gold coin in his pocket and hissed, "You tricked me." And of course he had, because the king had been in the packet all along. Before she shambled away, the gypsy woman reached out a gnarled hand and said, "You shall never again take the money of a stranger in this accursed game. From now until the end of time, you will always lose. That is my curse upon you." And with that, she disappeared into the crowd. Now, Pappy laughed, but sure enough, true to her word, Pappy never did win again. Because as he looked at his cards, he realized that now every card was a king. And every time he played the game and placed the cards on the table, every card that the mark chose was a winner. Every card was a king. And with that, Pappy would always lose. But I don't think things turned out for Pappy the way the old gypsy had expected them to. For without gambling to satisfy his vice, Pappy was forced to use his card skills for an even less reputable profession and became a magician.